What is good, YouTube? It's that one camera guy back at again with another video for you. This is a talking head video trying to answer this really interesting question that I wanted to pose to you, and whether or not you're still happy with the Sony Mirrorless camera and gear. So maybe you transitioned over from Canon to Canon to Sony, or Nikon to Sony, or some other brand, and you're using it today. Are you happy about it? Or you didn't start with any brands, you just jumped right into Sony. Are you happy currently where you're at right now with Sony Mirrorless? So that's what this whole talking head video is about. If it's not your cup of tea, just feel free to jump to another video. So the first thing I want to look at is talking about my own situation and how happy I've been using the Sony Mirrorless system and whether or not it's been adequate for everything that I wanted it to do. I came from Canon, started off with, I had the 5D series, 5D Mark IV, had a 1D cinema at some point, and I still have some of my Canon glass, and some of you are probably still in some similar boat. You've kind of jumped sort of into Sony, but not completely, still waiting on there for maybe an A7 Mark III, hoping that it comes out this year. I really do hope users get something like that instead of spending $3,000+ for the A7R III. Sort of like a mini improvement to the A7 II would be really nice. But am I really happy with the Sony Mirrorless system as of today? When I first transitioned over, sort of 1 foot here, 1 foot there, it wasn't a complete system at the time. I didn't feel that the Sony Mirrorless system was the end-all be-all, although you sort of had the impression that it was making its way there. When they released the A7R II, for example, things really changed when I saw that camera, especially the Alpha 6500, which offered really great autofocusing performance in the APS-C style body, 4K, 1080p, 120 frames per second. I was like, no one else is competing at this level. Maybe if you compare Panasonic GH4, for example, you could probably take into consideration, but those are different sensor sizes and a different category, in my opinion. But when the 6300, 6500 rolled around, I really got enthusiastic about the system, got the 7200 F4, and then later on got the 7200 G Master, and I threw on and added the A7R II to my arsenal. Now, was I happy when I got that system together? I was kind of lukewarm about it. At the time, I still had my 5D Mark IV and my 1D Cinema, which I used to take sports pictures, which was kind of like a 1DX. Really enjoyed those systems, and they performed incredibly well, and I had always been using them for the longest time. And here I am trying to use the Sony Mirrorless equipment, and I enjoyed it, especially with the mirrorless stuff, with the Alpha 6300, 6500, but it didn't feel quite complete. And it was only until the A9 was announced that this idea of the Sony Mirrorless system coming together really made sense. You can add on to the fact that they also dropped in some additional G Master series lenses and G series lenses to kind of round off their base of lenses that could cover everything that you pretty much needed. Now, they obviously still don't have every lens available that people could use, and lo and behold, we're still waiting on a long telephoto lens like a 400 2.8, but those things will come in time. But at the very moment, I feel very pleased with where Sony's at right now, even though it's been a struggle in order for people, in order for me to sort of accept it. I know for those of you out there that are using, let's say, for example, an APS-C body, are probably dissatisfied to a great degree because Sony just hasn't been making the effort to release any good lenses that are fast, like f2.8 zoom lenses or some additional primes. People have been having to wait on, for example, Sigma to release lenses, which aren't bad. They're fast primes and they're not going to break the bank. You know, it'd be a nice lens to add, you know, on a few months basis of time to your arsenal of lenses that you can use. But Sony really hasn't addressed the APS-C target group so much, and hopefully we'll see that going forward, or we might as well just wait for the likes of Sigma to go ahead and drop in some lenses in those categories to fill the gaps that are missing. But since I went ahead and moved on to full frame, I picked up the Sony A9 when I got it in the summer. It kind of made me feel that yes, this is the system. This system is moving in a really great direction. But at the time when I got the A9, I was like, man, that's a huge expense for $4,500. and they pushed a lot of users to go ahead and get that camera. And even till this day, they still do trade-ins, they do all these other things to try and get you to pick up the Sony A9. Whether maybe it's just not selling, maybe people are just aren't buying it. Maybe the issue is just the price and that the camera probably should have been a bit cheaper. Maybe $3,500 might have been the kind of price range. It is a technical marvel, don't get me wrong. The A9 is like from a different time frame. I don't know, it's like leapfrog a generation over its competitors in my opinion. 20 frames per second, silent shooting. Yeah, there's quirks about it, and I did deal with that overheating dilemma over the summer. But other than those things, as long as you're conscious of that, this camera screams performance and just prowess. I throw in crazy tough shooting situations, and every single time the A9 will deliver and deliver strongly in all those circumstances. There's nothing about it as far as the sports camera is concerned that I find a major weakness. Now, I've had my qualms about issues with it needing better firmware updates, things that are missing from it, and hopefully over time they'll start incorporating those things. For example, the ability to rate photos. They now give you the ability to protect images, but you can't rate the images with a star like you can on the A7 or 3. So simple, yet they don't have it built into the A9 or can't put it into the actual firmware. So some really scratching your head scenarios. Then came along the A7R3, and I think when this came around, I felt at this point, I think just all pure assumption, I would assume at this point most people just became more accommodating and welcoming of Sony Mirrorless. Now you had it's not affordable. Okay, I would say it's still expensive, but if you're the prosumer and kind of professional type, the A7R3 makes a lot of sense. If you are an amateur enthusiast and hobbyist, the A7R3 might be out of your reach. And again, you're waiting for an A7 III potentially to add to your arsenal of cameras. But the A7R3, having been dropped down from the price, about $1,000 to $1,200 less than the A9, gave you a really powerful camera in a reasonable price range, close to the 5D Mark IV type camera system, or even the D850, which again, they're stellar cameras. But now you have this camera, the A7R3, which offers nearly the same things that it has in the A9 with some slight modifications, and it has great things in it that the A9 doesn't have, but it's also missing a few things that the A9 has over the A7R3. You are going to get that really nice battery life, the dual SD card slot. You're just not going to get the same autofocusing speed and performance that you get from the A9, although in most conditions the A7R3's autofocusing is really good. But when I had a chance to test it head-to-head, in terms of low light and high ISO scenarios, the A9 has the advantage in those particular environments. So if you do find yourself shooting at those really, really tough scenarios, the A9 is still the way to go for low light autofocusing performance. The A7R3 obviously at this point would come in second place, but still very, very good in those regards. So at this time, we've got the 1635, the 2470, the 7200 G Master. You got an 85 G Master. You got a few more out there that I haven't mentioned, and some more to come. Like I said, you got the telephoto lenses coming in soon, the 400 f2.8. So are you happy with the Sony Mirrorless direction right now? For me, I am. I really am. There's options out there. It's expensive, okay? It's not cheap. And I really do think very hard about those purchases and hoping that there's third-party options out there. If you want to stay with first-party, which is not a bad idea, you get the same alignment of Pro Support that will assist you. And Pro Support's been kind of improving lately. They've got some more facilities. I think one just opened up in the LA area. So Pro Support from Sony is improving, which is a good sign. They're supporting their users, and that's always a plus. But the costs are still there, and it's just a premium you have to pay in order to jump into the mirrorless system, because right now, Nikon and Canon don't have any full-frame mirrorless alternatives, which may show up in this year or maybe next year very soon. So again, are you happy with Sony Mirrorless? I'd love to know in the comments below. And with that said, that's going to do it for me, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other content. And with that said, I'm your host, Camera Guy, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.